You're Greg, and where do you work?
I'm a manager at a nuclear power plant.
A big one
Yeah, one of the bigger ones in the U.S.
in the U.S. And you were talking about you had a fracture of your leg 3 years ago?
Yeah, I had a fracture in my leg 3 years ago.
Same leg?
Tibia, no, not different leg. Fracture of the tibia. I was in a cast for 6 weeks and a boot for another 4 weeks after that.
Okay. And you recently had another fracture?
Yeah, in my other leg, I fractured my heel, which the doctor said it was a much worse injury and it was much more painful. And he said minimum time I was going to be in a cast was 6 weeks and then a boot after that.
Okay. And you began using a QRS system after 3 weeks.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't get introduced to the QRS system until 3 weeks into my first cast. I used it for a week and one day actually, and then I had my appointment with the orthopedic. He took another x-ray of it and surprisingly said it had healed amazingly well, and he was not going to put another cast on me and was going to let me go straight to a boot, which he then said, he wanted me to, use crutches as I needed to. He figured I would need to use crutches for at least another week or two, and then I would come back and see where we were after that.
So he was amazed. It wasn't something
He was surprised that it healed as fast as it was. It was, he definitely figured I'd be back in a cast. In fact, when I first got there, and I didn't let them know that I had been using the QRS system, but when I first got there, they were actually contemplating not taking the cast off at all, and just because the cast was still in good shape, and they're like, well, you're gonna have to be in another 2 weeks. And I kind of said, well, why don't we take it off, take some x-rays and see how it looks. And when they did that, and they're like, oh wow, yeah, you don't need another cast.
Okay. And pain-wise, like before you were using the QRS, how was the pain?
The first 2 weeks was very painful, even with the cast on. I couldn't put any weight on it at all. I was using crutches and keeping weight off it continuously. I started using like I said, the QRS system at the third week.
What was the pain level like at that time when you started using it?
It wasn't horrible. It wasn't that I couldn't.
Scale of 1 to 10?
1 to 10, it was probably in a 3 to 4 range.
Okay.
By the time I went back to the orthopedic, and the pain was gone.
Was the pain gone like with your first treatment using the QRS, or did you notice any reductions, or did it take some time?
It took some time. I would say, within the first 3-4 days, I noticed that, I was like, wow, the pain's, I can actually put some pressure on my cast now without being in pain. I could,
So it didn't happen immediately?
No, it didn't happen immediately. It wasn't a single day thing. It was a few days using it, and the pain was almost gone completely. And by the time I went back to the orthopedic, I told him I didn't have any pain at all. It was more, if anything, it was just stiffness just from being in a cast for 4 weeks.
Okay. So 1 week of the QRS, and you were able to avoid a second cast, or another
Avoid
2
a
to
second
3 weeks?
Avoid a second cast. Avoid being, he said I was probably going to have, just because of, the pain or whatever, with being with the boot, I'd have to be on crutches for at least another week or two. I was on crutches for maybe 2 days, only because he said to use crutches. And after 2 days, I started walking on it, and there was no pain, and I was able to walk on it with the boot. So I really, I was in a boot for, instead of the 4 weeks that he said, I was in a boot for 2 weeks, and I was on crutches still with the boot for like 2 days. And then I wasn't anymore on crutches, and then after 2 weeks I really wasn't using the boot anymore either.
So if you want to get out of your cast early, you don't like being in a cast, you might want to try a QRS.
Yeah, the QRS definitely helped my recovery time, improved my time to be able to get back to in-plant work where I work, and getting with the people that I need to get with to do my job. It definitely helped there because, quite frankly, in a nuclear power plant, they don't like people walking around with crutches and casts in their plant. So this was able to get me back to work and get me back to where I needed to be much quicker than originally thought.
Right, you don't want to be standing over a fuel rod pool with crutches.
No,
And a cast.
no, not really. Yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot, Greg. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate all the help you've given me.